Hello, Truth Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Today is July 26th, 2018, and 16 years ago, my mother passed away of cancer. I held her hand as she died, and she was my best friend, the woman who gave me life and guidance and was my role model and example for health. Ironically, the healthiest person I knew. As I've shared previously on the show, she is one of the main reasons why I started the Learn True Health podcast. I want to spread this information through learning from all these amazing experts. I want to help as many people as possible so that they don't lose their mom prematurely. My mom was only 55 years old when she died of cancer. She had so many years ahead of her. And then 6 years later, my dad died of a broken heart, and he was only 61. Again, so many years ahead of him. Heart disease and cancer are among the top reasons why people die these days, and they're preventable. They're 100% preventable. We've seen that they're diseases of lifestyle. And so through diet, lifestyle, nutrition, holistic medicine, I do this podcast to disseminate this information and help as many people as possible to learn what it is to have true health, to cultivate it and to grow it inside themselves and share it and spread it with those they love. And hopefully, I can help someone not lose their mother too young or not lose their child too soon. Hopefully, families can stay together longer and healthier because of what I do, the work I do with this podcast. Thank you so much for being a listener and for sharing this show with those you love. Every email I receive from listeners touches my heart. I love hearing from you guys in the Facebook group. You can go to Facebook and type in Learn True Health, join the Facebook group. I love hearing from you there. I love hearing from you in email form or on Instagram or however you choose to contact me. Almost daily, I get messages or emails letting me know that the show is making a huge difference in your life. And another really common thing I hear is that you share it with those you love. You share it with your mom or your sister, your aunt, your coworker, your cousin, your best friend. And that through sharing, those people are getting the answers they're seeking and they're also transforming their health. That's exactly what I set out to do. Not only help you, but help all those people you love. Because if I could help just one daughter from losing her mother too soon, then it would have been worth it. I can't go back in time and share all this information that I've learned now with my mother and help her to course correct and save her life and save my dad's life. I know now full well that all this information through the over 200 interviews that I've done, I've learned how to reverse heart disease, how to prevent cancer, what to do when you do have cancer, and all these other diseases, how to prevent them and reverse them naturally. And we'll continue to explore these outstanding topics in further interviews. If only I had a time machine, I could save my parents, but I don't. And so what I can do is I can help save yours, or help save those you love, and help save you from that fate. Thank you so much for sharing this podcast and helping me to achieve my mission, to helping as many people as possible to learn true health. The guest I have on today touches my heart, and I know my mother would have absolutely loved her. She has the fiery spirit that my mother did. Chef AJ has been a big inspiration for me, And I was so thrilled that she decided to be on the show. And it's a wonderful interview. She is just amazing. If you have any struggle with weight, or if you have gut issues, I mean, there's so many things that her program helps to heal, because it's not about weight loss. It's about health gain. Gain your health, and your body will come back into balance. And she shares her story of her, the precancerous polyps that were in her gut, and how it was able to remove them naturally through diet. It's just miraculous what the body can do when we give it the nutrition it needs, and we stop feeding it the harmful foods that we think are benign, but that are actually killing us. So enjoy today's show. Please continue sharing it with those you love. Let's turn this ripple into a tidal wave and help as many people as possible to learn true health. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 278. I am so excited for today's guest. You don't even understand how much I am in love with this woman. Chef AJ is such an inspiration to me. I think I'm going to start crying. Back when I interviewed Dr. Alan Goldhammer in episode 230, my husband says it's the best time to go to a dentist. That, 2:30. Yeah, that's his humor. So Dr. Alan Goldhammer taught us in the show how we can reverse major diseases with some simple, I say simple because you can just do it, and you can reverse heart disease, diabetes, obesity, like major issues, even chronic adrenal fatigue and cancer. Big things with fasting and with specific changes to the diet that fully nutrify the body. And I kind of became obsessed with diving into Dr. Goldhammer's information. I started YouTube, binge watching every video I could find on him. And I stumbled upon a 2-part video where Chef AJ was hosting a Q&A with Dr. Alan Goldhammer. And I was in stitches laughing. It was funny. It was inspirational. And that's when I fell in love with you. So, Chef AJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love that you're also another AJ, Ashley.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The two AJs. And I bought your most recent book. I was really moved by your story. And the whole time I was reading it, of course, I was thinking to myself, I cannot wait. And I really hope that she gets on the show, because I cannot wait from all my listeners to hear her story. And I saw, in Googling you and sort of, stalking you online, I found some interesting information. Like there were before and after pictures of you before you cut out nuts and seeds, and after you cut out nuts and seeds. And it was like the Biggest Loser difference. You looked like you dropped like 40 pounds just in cutting out. Yeah. And I was like, man,
right,
this
50.
This really,
yeah, 50
so
pounds.
You have had some major life changes around food addiction, using food, figuring out how to use food as medicine, healing your body from major issues. And I love how you came all the way around full circle, and now you inspire thousands upon thousands of women and men to take back control of their life, their health, and their weight by going into the kitchen. And also what I love is that you teach us how to make it easy, because I think a lot of us are intimidated by the kitchen, and by having to cook from scratch. And so we're going to talk about all of that today. I'd love to start by having the listener hear your story. What was your early childhood like, leading up to, all these health issues that inspired you to ultimately be the Chef AJ that you are today?
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much. So I was born, typical standard American diet. Actually, maybe it wasn't so typical because we were Jewish. So it was the standard American Jewish diet, which is probably even higher in fat and animal protein than the traditional, Jewish, traditional standard American diet. And you had mentioned Dr. Goldhammer. He says we eat all the foods that start with K: kreplach, knishes, and oh, kugel, things like that. So eating was just like, yeah, I'm sure you've heard this, or you probably have friends. It's not necessarily a Jewish thing, but Jews are known for this. Italians, when we're hungry, we eat. When we're not hungry, we eat. When we're sad, we eat. When we're happy, we eat. Was surrounded by food. My mother, my grandmother, everybody in my family was robust, meaning morbidly obese. They were wonderful cooks. They suffered from all the diseases of lifestyle, from type 2 diabetes to heart disease to autoimmune disease to cancer. But this was just considered normal, genetics. That's what we were taught, the vagaries of old age. I became fat at the age of 5. Now, I was born in 1960. And, it's interesting because I think something like 1 out of every 3 children today under the age of 18 is overweight. But in 1960, Ashley, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. In a classroom of 40 children, there was always one fat kid. And guess who that was? Me, at least until high school. And then that we started getting into the 70s and 80s, and more people started becoming overweight. So it really isn't fun being the fat kid. I mean, it's more acceptable now socially, I guess, because there's so many more of them. But I remember we have a local pediatrician who would probably make a great guest for your show, Dr. Jay Gordon, who says, a fat kid never has a good day at school. And it's true, because when your thighs are rubbing together and abrading, and you get teased by the PE teachers because you can't, finish the workout, it's not fun. So it's never fun being overweight, but especially as a child. And, I think all that pain is what led me to do what I do now, because I don't want people to have to go through the pain, shame, humiliation that I went through for my life. And I wasn't really bullied. It wasn't like that, like where I was being constantly bullied or teased. But I remember that, I compensated by being very smart, being very funny, class clown, that kind of thing. But, I remember I had 2 older brothers, and I remember, and this is going to sound really mean, but when I think back, they were right, and they would say to me growing up, guys aren't going to date fat girls. And, they were right, because come time for my senior prom, I didn't have a date, and I asked a friend of mine. And so I, when I think about my childhood, it does make me kind of sad, and but that's the way it was. I didn't know why I was fat other than everybody else in my family was. I didn't learn until I was 43 years old that food had anything to do with how we look or feel or what diseases we could get or reverse. I just thought, it's genetic, and genetics are important, and to a certain extent they load the gun. But as Dr. T. Colin Campbell says, it's our diet and lifestyle that pulls the trigger. So when I was 11, I moved out to California from Chicago. I skipped a grade, so I was always a year younger than everybody. And I came out to California, and at 11 years old, when I was not even 5 feet tall, I was 160 pounds. That's obesity, and that's childhood obesity. And I was not happy. I was not comfortable. And in my 20s, I got up to about the 200s. But along the way, I developed a lot of maladaptive behaviors to try to figure out how to lose weight, because nobody was really offering me any suggestions back there. So I kind of tried to figure it out on myself with an offhand remark by an uncle of mine who said, you're so fat. This is not how to talk to an 11-year-old child. This is what he said. He goes, you're so fat. You could probably go a whole week without eating, and it wouldn't hurt you one bit. And I'm like, okay, well, he's my uncle. He's a medical doctor. He must know. So I went a week without eating. I lost weight. And guess what happened? For the next 7 years, I was anorexic. And so I was able to lose weight, but only risk putting my health at great risk, because there's so many complications with anorexia. One of them is death. I mean, look at Karen Carpenter, hospitalized multiple times, and it's not a pleasant disease in any manifestation. I developed liver damage, my fingernails fell out, my hair fell out. The thing about anorexia is it's not sustainable. I don't recommend it for weight loss or dietary control, because eventually you get so hungry that you eat, unless you die from the disease. And when you haven't eaten very much for many years, you often end up what I did, which was bulimic, which in a lot of ways was kind of worse than anorexia in some ways, because the thing about anorexia is, as horrible as it is, you're so cold and so tired all the time from starving, you don't really care. You don't really do very much. But with bulimia, you have the energy to do things because you're eating, but you're eating a lot, like maybe 10,000 calories, but then getting rid of them through other maladaptive behaviors, such as over exercising, in my case, smoking, purging, things like that. And that to me, in a lot of ways, is a more horrific disease to deal with. And I remember, getting so depressed. I actually did attempt suicide in my 20s. I could not deal with having eating disorders. And back then, I don't know if the treatment has improved today, but back then, it was basically they treated it like a mental disease. They locked you up in a psychiatric hospital, and if you didn't eat, they would shove a tube down your throat. Now, hopefully, things have gotten better. So the funny thing is for most of this time, I was vegan. I became a vegan at a very young age for ethical reasons at the age of 17 when I attended the University of Pennsylvania. And so you can be really unhealthy and be a vegan, by the way. I mean, I think being vegan is great for so many reasons. In general, your health, if you do it correctly, the health of the planet, and of course, the health of the animals. But I was what they call a junk food vegan, or Dr. McDougall might call a fat vegan. And I didn't eat any of the healthy foods that I eat today, like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. I had my own 4 food groups: candies, cakes, cookies, and ice cream, and a lot of caffeine and a lot of sugar, Coke, Slurpees, Dr. Pepper, potato chips, French fries. These are all vegan, but these are not health promoting foods. And by the way, I don't recommend those to people that aren't even vegan. I don't recommend junk food or processed food to anybody, whether they eat meat or not, which is why 10 years ago or 7 years ago, I can't remember, I wrote a book called Unprocessed. Well, by the age of 43, having eaten almost no fruits and vegetables my entire life, I woke up on January 1st, 2003, and I was bleeding profusely. And it turned out that I had what they called precancer because I had these things. My sigmoid colon was riddled with what are called edematous polyps that the gastroenterologist said if we don't remove them, you will get colon cancer. But he couldn't remove them during the normal procedure because my colon was in such a state of ill health from basically not eating food for 43 years other than, sugar and flour and caffeine and things like that. And so he told me that I was going to have surgery, like cut you open surgery. And I am deathly afraid of anesthesia. I've been asthmatic most of my life. And when I was in my teens, I had a routine operation. And because of my asthma, became allergic to the anesthetic and had to be resuscitated. And I never forgot that. And so I just won't have surgery unless it's literally like to save my life, like maybe if it was a car accident or something. And I said, no, thank you. And I did some research, and I didn't know about True North then or Dr. Goldhammer, unfortunately, because the internet, I don't think was invented then, or if it was, I sure didn't have it. But I had found this magazine, and it talked about this place in Lemon Grove near San Diego, California, called the Optimum Health Institute. And I went there on July 6th. I remember it was a Sunday, 2003. And I read that if they caught you with any contraband, like if you had food that wasn't what they served, they would actually kick you out and not give you your money back. So before I had the cab, I know exactly, right? It's hilarious, and I've known them to do that actually because I've been there a couple times since. So I had the cab driver pick me up at the San Diego airport, and I had him take me to 7-Eleven. And I had a Coke Slurpee in one hand and a Dr. Pepper in the other hand. This was my breakfast and lunch every day for forever. And I drank these, and they dropped me off. And let me tell you, detox is a bitch. Withdrawal is a bitch. I didn't even understand food addiction back then. I didn't know any of this. But what I learned there really set the stage for me becoming a whole healthy person, because it was the first time that anyone, because I remember going to doctors in my life, like in my 20s, and saying, I think I have a problem with sugar. I think I'm like, no such, there's doctors today that don't believe in food addiction or sugar addiction. But even though there were no medical doctors at the Optimum Health Institute, there were chiropractors and nurses and other health professionals, psychologists. And it was the first time that anybody was even having a conversation about food and health and what an impact what you eat has on everything: how you feel, how you look, how you sleep, what diseases you get, what diseases you can reverse. And people would come back on Friday. It's a 3-week program, but you can do it in phases. I didn't do all 3 weeks at one time or even at the same location. They have another campus also in Austin, Texas. And people would come and give testimonials on how eating this way, and by this way, Optimum Health is 100% raw. I don't believe you have to eat 100% raw to be healthy or heal, but their diet is. But more than that, it's whole foods. There's no processed food. There's no sugar or oil or flour or alcohol or salt or caffeine or chocolate or anything like that. And people would come back and give testimonials how eating this way healed them from all kinds of diseases that we are told are completely incurable. And I don't even mean the stuff that we know can be reversed through whole food, plant-based nutrition, like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disease. These people had things like lupus, Lyme's disease, brain cancer, AIDS. And they were saying, I went here, I ate this way, and now I'm cured. And I'm like, well, gosh, I don't even have full-blown cancer yet. This should be pretty easy. So I ate the diet, and I did some other techniques. I mean, I would say I'm not a religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person, but I did some praying and some meditation and some visualization. And, I stuck to the diet for about 2 years. And about 6 months afterwards, I went back to my HMO to have a repeat sigmoidoscopy. And the doctor said, he had asked me, it was the same doctor, by the way, and he asked me where I went to have my surgery. And I said, like, I'm going to pay for I go, what are you talking about? He goes, well, I have pictures of your whole, colon, and I know where every polyp is and what size it is, and you have none. He says, your colon is now clear, clean, pink, and vascular like a newborn baby. So where did you have the polyps removed? I said, I didn't. He goes, well, where are they? And I said, I don't know. I just changed my diet. He goes, well, that's impossible. And he storms out of the room, right? And so the assisting GI doctor, I think she was from India because her accent, she goes, once the doctor was gone, she goes, I believe you. And there, like how Oprah talks about a light bulb moment, my life changed in that moment. I was like, why isn't, instead of putting butter in coffee on Time Magazine, why isn't this being shouted from every rooftop in the world, on every newspaper, that you can actually heal your body with food? Because why couldn't you? Because how I created the disease with food, even though I wasn't eating animal products, which we know are linked to all kinds of things, I still wasn't eating food. I was eating sugar and flour and oil and caffeine, and everything I was eating was acidifying and cancer promoting, and just it wasn't food. And so I really learned what food was there. I learned that food does not come in a can, a box, a bottle, or a bag. I mean, there's some exceptions. I use canned salt-free tomato products and salt-free beans, but largely, you know what I mean. Food is not something that's manufactured in a plant. It comes from a plant. And my view on food was forever changed. So much so that, like, when I got back from Optimum Health, I almost couldn't even shop in a grocery store because there really wasn't very much food. Unless you go to the produce section and the bulk section, all those other 32 aisles or whatever, those aren't food. And it changed my life. And it led to me eventually writing that book called Unprocessed, which is really nothing more than Jack LaLanne has been saying his whole life. I mean, he always said these 13 words: if God made it, eat it. If man made it, don't eat it. And even though, yes, I'm vegan and I'm proud of it, as a matter of fact, I was just inducted into the Vegetarian Hall of Fame for 41 years of being vegan, I still don't want people to eat processed food, even if they are eating animal products. I would prefer them not to eat animal products, especially dairy. But even if you do, why are you eating processed food? Processed food is not food. It may be readily available, socially acceptable, easily affordable. It's pervasive, it's insidious, it's everywhere, but it's not food. And it drives me crazy. Not that people eat it and like it. I get it. It's delicious. But that it's considered like, just like that it's okay to eat it and to feed it to kids. If you had a child, and you have a kid, I've heard you talk about your kid on the podcast, and you started deciding to just give your kid cocaine for whatever reason, and somebody found out, like maybe a neighbor or Child Protective Services, like, your kid would probably be taken away from you pretty quick. Yet parents feed their children stuff that's depending on who you talk to, as or more addictive than cocaine or heroin, like processed food. Like, it's in everything from baby formula to geriatric formula. And I mean, unless the kid grows to like 300 pounds, I mean, that's considered okay parenting. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have kids, but it drives me crazy when I see the way kids are being fed. Like, I'll go to Costco and get my organic vegetables, and they have this special, I don't know, I think it's like $2, where you get a hot dog and a soda, and the refills are free. And I see these parents who are obese themselves with children that barely can fit into the cart, and they get their hot dog and soda, and then they get their first soda, and then they pour their soda into the sippy cup and give it to the 2-year-old, and then they get another soda. And I'm like, I want to call like child abuse, but
Mm.
it's like it doesn't seem like most people have woken up to the fact that what we eat really matters.
Oh, Google Mountain Dew mouth. It's an actual, it's sad. It's sad. It's an actual condition that happens to infants and toddlers because of parents that feed them, that put in their baby bottle or in their sippy cup these acidic, sugar-filled soda pops like Mountain Dew and Pepsi and all that stuff. It's actually a medical condition. You can see the images, a Mountain Dew mouth.
Wow.
It's so I weep, and I meet people where they are, right? Like if a listener is coming in and they feed their kids, McDonald's. Like I really I want that listener to feel loved and hugged and welcome to our community. And I don't want to make them feel shame and guilt and everything, right? I want to help them to understand the right path. And that's the one part of me. And the other part of me wants to just grab every single person on the planet and shake them and say it is child abuse to feed children sugar.
Yep.
It's not healthy, it's not helpful. And I see a really big difference in my son's behavior. And we don't feed him processed sugar, but if I feed him um too many bananas, he just goes, becomes a human ping pong ball. And although I believe fruit is healthy, I watch his behavior very closely and watch, what he eats. And I see that there's, when he has certain foods, he is so chill and cool and can talk to you and just is like a fun kid to be around. And then he eats other foods and you can't even, have a conversation with him. He's throwing toys. He's, violent. He's a regular like 3-year-old acting like, someone who's been on McDonald's. And we think that's kind of normal for kids, but look at adults. What if we, constantly are on sugar? We don't realize that our emotional state, the ups and the downs of blood sugar is affected. My husband and I early in our relationship discovered that every argument, every screaming match we ever had was directly related to blood sugar. And then when we cleaned
Wow.
up our diet, we stopped fighting. And it's not like, it's not like we were like punching each other or anything, but it's we became different people. We recognized that my husband, who was a very genuinely kind person, would become like Jekyll and Hyde if he was hopped up on sugar or having a sugar crash. And I at the time who was healing from diabetes, I would be very hard to live with. And then when I cleaned up my diet and my blood sugar and he cleaned up his blood sugar, now it's very rarely that we would, eat something that would cause us to go into that event. But the second we do, we recognize it. And so we don't fight. We go, oh, wow, I'm having that was too much. That was clearly too much sugar. I can't even remember when the last time it was. But we noticed how much, how many divorces could be
Mm,
related to the food issues, right? Like the sugar in food, because of how much it does hijack our emotional state, our concentration, like our emotions, mentally and physically and spiritually and energetically, just the whole package. Our entire life is hijacked by what we eat, and we're marketed to eat all this processed junk food. um it's a really big juggernaut to now say to us, if you want optimal true health, eat what came from a plant and not what came from man, because it's really going to take doing a major cleansing out of the kitchen. Like some people's cupboards are filled with the processed food, and a whole new, like, opening up to a whole new world. And I'm really excited for you to share this with us today, how we can do that, how we can just donate or throw out or get rid of everything in the kitchen that is just filled with this junk, this artificial junk that's poisoning us. Think of it as just poison. It's like the stuff that's under your sink, like bleach, right? You wouldn't drink that. Why are you feeding yourself, red dye number whatever that is
yeah.
a known carcinogen? And it's in a lot of these foods that are, apparently appropriate to feed kids, known carcinogens.
Yeah. I don't know the answer how to, I mean, I can help people, once they decide to make the change, but how to get this information other than through, podcasts like yours and some of the films that are coming out. But it's crazy how pervasive it is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so, and then you try to take it away and it's like, oh, well, I want my kid to be normal. I don't want my,
Ugh.
it's like, but normal, I don't think that it's normal. First of all, maybe it's the norm. It's just and also, kids have different sensitivities. There's certain kids that probably can have a little bit of crap and not go, not be bouncing off the walls, but there's others that are really sensitive to the effects of these foods that are going to get fat or sick. And it's just, you don't need these foods. That's the thing. They're not. And again, the fact that we even call them food, they're not food. It shouldn't even be called processed food because it's not food.
Mm.
You know?
Yes. I
Ugh.
absolutely agree with you. It's processed poison not meant for human consumption.
Absolutely. And in the schools, like, I mean, I have friends that have children. A lot of them are homeschooling now. I think you had an episode on that, didn't you? Because
Mm-hmm.
why you almost have to, because you can't, these companies have contracts, and, so to have their pizza or their soda or whatever, and some of the people, it almost seems, Ashley, that the people that could benefit most from the best nutrition, the elderly, people in prisons, children, people in hospitals, all these compromised people are fed the worst possible food. I mean, our armed forces, for example, I mean, gosh, you would hope that if there's like a war, they would feel, we want them to feel good, right? Instead, we feed them crap. The people that could benefit the most from good nutrition are getting the worst nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That is
crazy, huh?
so true. That is so true. That reminds me when you said like people in prison, a lot of times um things need to be healed emotionally and mentally for people who've been sent to prison as part of their correction, as part of their, coming back into the world. There's a lot that needs to be healed emotionally and mentally that led them to where they were. And they did these experiments where they took entire schizophrenic wards and they would take them off of grains, for example, and watch what happened, and put them back on grains and watch what happened. And they found that they could basically make schizophrenic episodes go dormant when they changed their diet, such as removing processed. When I say grains, it's like the flours and the
Yeah.
processed crap. And just imagine if we took an entire prison population and put them on whole foods and no sugar and no stimulants, and how much clarity that would give them to help them rehabilitate themselves. Instead, we're loading them with junk and then sending them back out into the world. We're loading our children with junk and expecting them to receive an education. We're loading our armed forces with junk, and expecting them to perform at their best. And you're right, with senior citizens, and it's it's criminal to think that McDonald's and Pizza Hut and all those fast food joints have contracts with the public school systems, with the cafeterias, because children don't have they're chasing what tastes good. You love the book The Pleasure Trap, and I do too.
Yes.
Dr. Alan Goldhammer and Dr. Lyle wrote that book, and it's such an eye opener. I really do recommend it for all the listeners, regardless of whether you have weight to lose or not, because it gives you a deeper understanding into human nature and to what we're up against. And the fact that they're using marketing and using our dopamine, are chasing these highs like we're freaking drug addicts. The companies are using the human instinct against us to get us hopped up on their drugs, which is burgers and fries and sugar.
Right. And the what about the TV? The
Mm-hmm.
commercials they have that are marketed, especially during times that children watch, of the worst possible imaginable food. And then the kid sees it on TV, and then they go to the store and they see it in the store, and like they don't put it on the high shelf where the kid, it's always right where basket level is.
Ugh.
You ever notice how they do this, the shelf placement of the crap at the register, and right exactly where the kid sitting in the basket can point to it. And
Yeah.
God, I've been to stores, literally, even healthy, so-called healthy stores like Whole Foods, which still has some stuff that isn't
Yeah.
whole or food, and some hyper palatable stuff at the register. And I have been there where kids have, like, I've seen kids like telling their mother, not asking, that they want something, and the mother says no and no, and like literally have tantrums, like laying on the floor, kicking their feet and hands and crying until they get some kind of cookie or something. And then it's like watching little drug addicts in the making.
Yep.
And Dr. Furman has a new book about this called Fast Food Genocide, which
Yes.
basically says that so many of the behavioral problems and criminal problems we're seeing comes from feeding our kids these foods.
Absolutely. I love that book too. In fact, we have listeners can join our Patreon and support the Learn Child podcast. And we have a book club, and we just did that book. We just did the Fast Food Genocide, and the whole chapters on that. They could see, with all these mass studies, they could actually see a correlation between criminal activity and diet. And whether they're more likely, whether how they eat as a child determines not only if they're going to get cancer in 30 years or diabetes or obesity, but whether they're going to have a higher education, whether they're going to make more than $100,000 a year, whether they're going to become a manager, whether they're just going to whether they're going to succeed in life or not. They can actually see that because they followed so many children and so many families. They're able to see that how the parents eat and how the parents, make an example of what they eat on a regular basis to the children, and what the children eat determines their long-term success in life, both health and wealth. And it's mind-blowing. And also, it also there was a lot of correlations between whether someone is going to develop depression, be suicidal, the other emotional issues from the kinds of food they eat. So, and this is something that, you yourself have shared. When in your story, when you had that aha moment, when your colon was like a newborn baby and your body was reborn, in how many months was it? 6 months of eating this way?
Only 6 months of just not eating crap and just eating basically fruits and vegetables and some seeds, because they used a lot of seeds they didn't use nuts, but they used like a lot of seeds like tahini and sunflower seeds. They made like this I don't know what it was called, this blob that was like our protein or whatever. 6 months. Incredible, huh?
So for those who are listening and it's July, sometime in January, if it's by the time it's August, sometime in February of next year, if you were to adapt this way and you have a disease, you have emotional or mental issues, or you're just not satisfied or happy with your health, you could be reborn a whole new person if you committed to doing this for the next 6 months. And it's not that far away. It's like we blink and 6 months goes by, right? But it's something that I think a lot of people at first are like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. But then 6 months go by and they still have their problem. And MDs will keep giving them drugs because MDs know how to manage a disease, not cure it. And they're always surprised, and they are in kind of in disbelief when you reverse your type 2 diabetes like I did, because they want to just keep giving you, the drugs that manage it. And then when all of a sudden you don't have it, they're like, well, what did you do? And then you say you changed your diet, and they're like, oh yeah. And then I've had so many people tell me this, that the MD did not even want to know what diet or how they changed their way of eating. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to know and pass that information on to other people. They're satisfied, unfortunately, with continuing this sickness. It's not health.
Right. Yeah. I mean, until they like make nutrition in medical schools mandatory, I don't think doctors are going to necessarily know. I don't think it's necessarily that they don't care. They didn't learn it.
Yeah. Well, and this is why people are listening to people like you and shows like this, so that they can we got to learn it for ourselves. We have to self-advocate. I'm really curious to know what happened next. So your body was reborn.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there? How did you go from now seeing the light and healing yourself to wanting to help others learn how to do the same?
Well, that's a great question. Thanks, Ashley. So, you mentioned my body was reborn, but, my mind was too, because even though I had still not, even though weight loss had still eluded me, I still, managed to be overweight, even eating this way. I felt so good not having that crap. And I remember just the clarity, it was like having a new brain, which in many ways was even more important than the body, because I just felt so good not being stuck in the pleasure trap, not having to, medicate with some kind of sugar or caffeine, all throughout the day. So that was amazing. So what happened is after I left Optimum Health, I was working at a retirement home as an activity director, working about 60 hours a week, and my energy was just through the roof because the thing is, sugar gives you a high, but it also you crash, and so I was always sleepy unless I was constantly medicating with some kind of chocolate or sugar or caffeine. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to stay on this diet unless the food started tasting a little better. Because you can do anything short term. Everybody, I mean, look at that show, The Biggest Loser. I mean, almost everybody on that show gained their weight back. But if somebody's, offering you $250,000, you can eat cardboard and exercise your butt off for a few months. So anybody can do anything for a short term, for their high school reunion or their daughter's wedding, they can lose weight. But the thing is it going to be sustainable? And the way that they teach you to eat at Optimum Health, it's really more for healing, I think, and detox. I mean, maybe there are people that eat that way long term. It's mostly salads without dressing and fruit and some juices and like these seed cheeses. It, wasn't like really delicious. And so I knew that if I was going to be able to eat this way long term, at least for me, it was going to have to taste a little bit better. And so what I did is I took because after about 6 months, it was like, oh boy, God, I couldn't look at one more, just plain old salad, right? So I enrolled in culinary school. I went to the Living Light Culinary Art Institute. And back then it was like this 30-day intensive program where you just basically all day like worked and learned. And I took all the courses at once. And I just wanted to make the food taste a little bit better. Not knowing then that I was actually kind of getting myself back into the pleasure trap, because even though it was raw and based on a lot of fruits and vegetables, they used a lot of the hyper palatable, addictive chemical foods that Dr. Goldhammer talks about, specifically sugar, salt, and oil. And yes, they used the best, finest cold pressed extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil, and they used agave instead of sugar, and they used, Celtic or Himalayan sea salt. But as we know, sugar, fat, and salt are addictive. It doesn't matter what the packaging. So, but it was really a great experience because I learned some confidence, and I learned kitchen confidence, I meant, and I was able to actually become a professional chef for a while, for 5 years, to add to my resume. So all that all was very good. But I was still doing so much better than I was before, because even though I was using some of these things like the oils and the sugars and the salt, I wasn't eating the caffeine anymore. I wasn't having white sugar every minute of every day. I wasn't, I wasn't having flour. So I was doing a lot better. Still, weight loss had eluded me. So I went on to get a job as a pastry chef, which is now, if I had known like back, they always say, I wish I knew today what I knew back then. Ashley, I wish I knew now what I'm supposed to know in 10 years. I wish somebody would just tell me today what I'm supposed to know in 10 years so I could do things better or differently. But the reality is I didn't really know until probably about 6 years ago that food addiction existed and that I was a food addict. Having known that, I probably would not have gotten a job as an executive pastry chef, because that's like having, the fox be the guard of the hen house. It's not the best thing to do, or having an alcoholic be the bartender. But that said, it's still, you really, it was a good experience. I created a lot of joy and pleasure for people that could have these things in a way that was, I don't want to say really healthful, but a lot less damaging, because it didn't have the animal products and the flours, and I used dates instead of sugar. And then there are people that can eat this stuff. So I'm glad I created it so that they can enjoy these recipes now. So I did that. And let's see, so we're talking 1904, I'm going back to 2003. So I did that till, let's see, the restaurant closed in 2000 and, it closed in 2011. I worked there from 2007 to 2011 for 5 years. And that's when I wrote my book, Unprocessed. And that book was really great because it helped a lot of families. I hear from a lot of people with children, because children don't necessarily have to, not eat some of these foods. A lot of children can have, a date and nut sweetened dessert with some, raw cacao powder, and they can be absolutely fine with it. So I look at my first book, Unprocessed, as more of like transitional recipes, especially for people trying to get off the standard American diet, because I think my recipes, especially things like the lasagna and the hail to the kale, they're good. They're foods that I think regular people will eat and enjoy. And so, I never really thought about like a career as a chef, or, getting to, be in Chef AJ or being an author or anything like that. until about, it was 2000 and, let's see, yeah, it's 2008. Now I remember exactly the time frame. I was taking a course called the Wisdom Course, and it was through an educational system called the Landmark Forum that a lot of people think, they think it's a cult. It's not.
No, it's not a cult.
I know.
I did not
Oh,
know you did wisdom. Wisdom's
I
like the only course at Landmark I haven't done.
Oh, it was the best. It changed my life. I got to tell
Yeah.
you, because first of all, people think veganism is a cult. People think my ultimate weight loss program is a cult, and I say it is a cult. But what cult stands for is complete, unconditional, loving tribe. That's what a cult. So
Aw, I love
yes.
it. I was actually on staff at Landmark in Toronto.
Oh my God, that is
So
so
I love
crazy.
Landmark, and I think
I'm
everyone
so
should do the
glad.
form, and especially
Right.
the advanced course. And it's not a
Yes.
cult, and just go do it. It's amazing. It's just transform. It just gets you to own your own
Right.
stuff,
It's just
right?
a weekend. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's a
And,
weekend, but it transforms your whole life,
right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did the regular course and the advanced course and a lot of the seminars. But then in 2008, I was taking a 1 year program called the Wisdom Course. And it's so funny because I love telling the story in my cooking class because it's so funny how it came full circle. So 2008, 2009, I took this wonderful class called the Wisdom Course, which really is a lot about play and fun. It's not like really about like, deep stuff, the bad stuff. It was really like a very creative course where you just like, it was just really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And every week we would have like we would call these homework parties with the people that were in our group where we'd get together and we'd do our homework. And one of the guys in my class was a guy named Don Grady. And if anybody here is over 50 years old, they may remember either a show called My Three Sons or the Mickey Mouse Club. And there was an actor on the show named Don Grady. He was Robbie on My Three Sons, the very good-looking oldest son with the cleft chin. And in 2008, he was 63 years old. And he was in my class, such a nice guy. He had become a professional singer. And it was June or July of 2008, he had told me, or he told the group, he said, listen, guys, I'm very sick, but I don't want to talk about it. And we said, okay. And I emailed him and I said, look, but I still didn't know a lot about nutritional medicine or food as medicine, but I did hear peripherally about people like Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Joel Furman that were using food as medicine. And I emailed him, I said, there are these doctors, Dr. John McDougall, Dr. Joel Furman, and they use nutritional medicine to treat and reverse disease. Maybe you want to get in touch with them. And he wrote me back and he said, well, I'm already a patient of Dr. Furman's, but if the food tastes this bad, then I'd just rather die. And I said, well, so what are you eating? And I really hadn't heard of Dr. Furman back then. That was 10 years ago. And now, of course, I have the pleasure of knowing him and he's been to my house. I speak at a lot of conferences with him. And so what I did is I ordered, everything from Dr. Furman's website at the time, every book and every DVD. And I said, look, I'm a chef. I said, let me figure out what you can eat. And I'll try to make it in a manner that you really, really would like it, right? So I got all this stuff, and I'm hearing this stuff, and it's like, and my mind is being blown. I mean, as much as it was blown at Optimum Health Institute, it's like now, like really being blown. And then getting all this stuff on Dr. Furman's website led me to another website that was founded by my now friend Jeff Nelson called VegSource, where he produced a conference every year, and I ordered every DVD. So here I am just watching all these DVDs of people like Dr. T. Colin Campbell and Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn and Dr. John McDougall, people that I'd never heard of that are now my friends and colleagues. And my mind is continually being blown by what they're saying. And so I told Don, I said, look, because I was still, vegan when I met him, an obese vegan, eating, treats that I made in the bakery, but not eating, animal products and no longer eating white sugar or caffeine and things like that. I said, I'm going to figure out what your diet is. I said, I'm going to go on your diet for a few weeks. And because I want my palate to be like how it feels to be used so that I can create foods that I know you're going to enjoy.
Cool.
I had no idea that like this was going to be like forever, honestly. And I think anybody listening to this that's making a dietary change or quote going on a diet, I think if you tell yourself it's forever, you're never going to do it. You're going to be depressed. And I don't, even though I don't eat sugar or oil or flour or alcohol, salt, I don't tell myself every day that I don't eat these things or that I can't have these things. I do what Dr. Goldhammer says. I'm doing a 50-year experiment. And then if I want it, I'll have it. But I think if you tell yourself I can never have it, or if you associate it like with like I'm a bad person if I have it, it won't work. But I think that most people can run an experiment for maybe 21 days or 30 days just to see how they feel. And then if they want to go back to it, they can. So I never said to him, I'm going to eat your way, because to me, it sounded very, at the time, let me tell you, somebody that was a pastry chef making, frozen chocolate peanut butter cheesecake and German chocolate cake and eating this stuff every day because it was in my freezer, to hear that, you have to eat a diet without sugar or oil or flour or salt, it did sound extreme. But I was doing it to help a friend, which I think helped. I wasn't even considering my own health or my weight. I was doing it to just see how I could help somebody make their food taste better. And now I know that there are reasons why this diet is a wonderful diet for many people, especially people with diseases, and may even be the most rational way to eat, especially for people that have a disease or suffer from food addiction. But at the time, it wasn't about the health. It was like, okay, let's see if I can clean my palate up enough to try to make this way of eating taste good for you. So it was August 1st, 2008, when I adopted an SOS, as Dr. Goldhammer calls, sugar, oil, salt-free diet, so that I could figure out some way to make the food taste better for Don. Well, that's when I realized I had a problem, because all of a sudden, I'm not eating the stuff that I'm used to eating every day, which was still a lot of dessert, albeit healthier dessert now, because instead of, having Coke, Slurpees, and Dr. Pepper, it was my own creations with lots of dates and nuts and cocoa powder, but it was still pretty high fat, high calorie, hyper palatable, stuff. And so I knew enough to know about behavioral change, that if you want to make a change, you can't have the stuff in your house. I smoked in my teens. And, when I quit smoking, I got rid of not just the cigarettes, but anything associated with smoking, like the matches, like the little, souvenir ashtray that somebody got me in Paris, that kind of thing. I knew enough that the environment predicts success. So while I was running this experiment, I got rid of all the crap in the house. And so when I did that, there was nothing to eat. And that's unfortunately going to be the case with a lot of these parents or a lot of people that aren't eating a health promoting diet. When you actually clean your house out of the stuff that's not so good for you, you might find that there's nothing to eat. So that was sort of my case. So I filled the freezer up with things like, fruits, and, frozen organic fruits, vegetables, and things like that. So I was doing this, a couple days went by, and I noticed that I felt kind of like irritable, anxious, shaky, kind of teary, almost like sad in a way. And I didn't know what was going on. And about 5 p.m., I'd get through the day okay, but 5 p.m. which is usually when I would medicate with, I don't know, like something from the bakery that was in my freezer. I would open the freezer and nothing would be there. And I would just kind of start crying. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I have a friend that's a recovering alcoholic. And I told her what I was experiencing. And I said, is this what it's like to be an alcoholic? Was this what it was like for you? She goes, well, what time are you getting this way? I said, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. She goes, well, that's what in AA, what we call the witching or the bewitching hour. And I'm like, you know what? I really do have a problem with certain foods, with high fat, high sugar, foods. And so that was sort of when I first became aware of that foods have, for some people, certain foods can have these psychoactive properties. So yes, about like when I decided to help people, well, really what happened was just trying to help this guy out. In the wisdom course, we created what was called an initiative, kind of a goal that we wanted to set. And so instead of like setting goals like I want to make a lot of money and be famous or whatever, we set goals that would help people or help the world. And I remember my initiative is that I wanted to help people in their lives in the area of their health. That was my initiative. And it was through knowing Don Grady in the Wisdom Course that I created my cooking classes, because it all started out where he came over. I was already teaching at culinary schools. I was teaching at culinary schools for 8 years prior, but culinary schools where you used oil and sugar, the vegan recipes though. And so I remember having him come over with his wife and another lady named Mary, who was one of also the Musketeers and a hypnotherapist. There was just 6 of us in my little tiny kitchen. And I created a bunch of recipes that I had worked on that I thought he would like. I remember them because they're in my book: the nutrient-rich black bean soup, the hail to the kale, the peanut butter fudge truffles. And he really liked the food. he really liked it. And he said, you should teach these recipes. And I said, Don, who's going to like pay to come take a class without sugar or oil or salt? And he goes, well, you'd be surprised. And, I started teaching all the recipes that he came over for that. Now we're talking September, I think, 2008. I started teaching that class, and of all the classes I've ever taught, that always continues to be the most popular one and the one that sells out. And something happened in the last year. So I'm sitting in my living room right now talking to you, and I live in a fairly small 1,000-square-foot apartment, but the living room is very large, so we can get about 20 people in here for my cooking classes that I teach in the living room. And in the recliner, there was a lady sitting there. And I was telling this story, like I told you about Don Grady, and how this man basically changed my life. And it turned out that he couldn't have surgery because he had advanced palate cancer and he was a singer, and you don't do radiation to the head. And he did end up dying, but he lived about 5 years longer, from changing his diet. And so I'm teaching the class, and I always tell the story about Don Grady. And a lady was sitting in the chair, and I'm telling the story, and she goes, I'm his sister, and you helped extend his life. Aww. And everything came, I just started crying. And it was just like, because he changed my life. He changed my life, because if he hadn't been sick and I hadn't tried to help him, I'd still be, almost 200 pounds, and who knows where I'd be if I hadn't gotten this information. So, it's just was the most beautiful thing ever that happened, to have it come full circle like that.
And how beautiful that one of the last things he did on this planet was inspire you to now help thousands of people. So because of him and his life and his last few years of his life, he is now part of the legacy of helping thousands and thousands of people. Isn't that beautiful?
It's the coolest thing ever. They say nothing happens by accident, and that's why I want to know now what I'm supposed to know in 10 years. So if you have anybody out there, if you ever interview any psychists or anything, please send me a letter. Just help me not to have to go through anything else, anything hard again. Yeah.
That is so cool. So you went on you taught these classes, you published books, you have a TV show, or is your TV show still on?
On hiatus right now because I do fund it myself, and I did the first time I paid for it, and then the second time I did an Indiegogo. So I'm hoping to gather the funds to do another season. So I certainly hope so, because it really is a fun way to reach people, and I do enjoy it, because it was a cooking show, but it was also a lifestyle show, because I got to interview some really cool people like Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Campbell, and I would love to do it again because it is a lot of fun.
Isn't Dr. Esselstyn a hoot? I had him on the show, and it blew my mind. And it was so funny. Before we hit record, I said his name wrong, and then he's got my name wrong. And so we both kind of walked into this interview like not really knowing a lot about each other. And because I pronounced his name wrong, and then it's like, as we went through the interview, I'm thinking, this is like the most impactful information I've ever heard in my life. And everyone within 5 feet, I practically tell, like, do you know that if you had blockages in your heart, like, you can use food 100% to reverse them? I mean, it's just like, it blows your mind, because we're raised to think that go to an MD and get put on pills or have a surgery, get a stent put in, lower your cholesterol with medication. And I mean, that's what people think, or, get a stent, lower your cholesterol with medication, and that's it, and go home. And that's what, that's where people think, heart disease is. And then there's this man who regularly reverses it with diet. It blows it's like the Matrix, but for food. And so I had one of those kind of like pull out of the Matrix moments when I had him on the show. But what I love about what you do is you take the diet these doctors recommend, that, they have a plethora of science and clinical information that dictates why to eat this way, but they're not good at making it taste good, right? And
Right.
so it's, like you said, your friend was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this because it doesn't taste very good. And you have a knack for taking these incredibly healthy foods and actually making them taste good. You have some great videos on YouTube for how to make it fast and easy.
Yeah.
Because that's my problem, is that if I'm tired and it's 6 p.m. and I have to feed my family, I'm going to gravitate towards what's fast and easy, versus it's like, okay, well, now I've got something that's going to take a long time to cook. And so you come up with really great tips and tricks for how to do that. I'd love to dive into that if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
absolutely. So you're right, because if we don't make the healthy choice the default, we're always going to eat the unhealthy choice, and that's why fast food is so popular, because it's cheap, it's fast, it's easy. You can get 2,000 calories for 99 cents and just never have to get out of your car. So I really think, and I talk about this in, I think it's chapter 5 or 4 of my book, The 7 C's to Success. People are going to have to learn some basic cooking techniques if they want to be successful, or they have to get somebody to do it for them. But it doesn't mean you have to go to culinary school. You have to be willing to devote a few hours every week to just some batch cooking. And I have free videos on YouTube showing people how to do this. Because if you always have healthy food ready, then it's not going to be so hard to assemble a healthy meal, especially if you're willing to eat more simply and eat what I call like the one bowl method instead of having to do complicated recipes. So for example, like today for lunch, I didn't have a lot of time. I had maybe 30 minutes between the time, to be ready for this interview. And I was actually getting quite hungry. But I always batch cook sweet potatoes of every kind and also regular potatoes. So
Love
at
it.
a moment's notice, I can have a sweet potato. Now I can eat it cold. I can eat it microwaved. I can cut it up and put it in the air fryer for fries. What I did today, which was absolutely delicious, and I actually did a Facebook Live and when I was doing it and put it right away on YouTube, is I took one of these delicious Japanese sweet potatoes that practically taste like vanilla cake. They're so good. And I cut it in half and I stuffed it with some blueberries and I put some fresh mint on top and a little fruit flavored balsamic vinegar. And it felt like I was eating a hot fudge sundae, and it was satisfying. It was delicious. It was quick. But there are other things you can do. If you don't like sweet potatoes, you can always have some healthy whole grains ready. You can have rice that's cooked, millet, quinoa. You can have some in your freezer. They make aseptic packages now of quinoa and rice organic. They make it frozen organic, where you can just heat it up in the microwave for 3 minutes. Beans, of course, I recommend people cook them from scratch because they're so much cheaper. And if you get an Instant Pot electric pressure cooker, you could do it in 10 minutes, but you can get a can of salt-free beans in a bag or a BPA-free can, so that, one of the quickest meals that anyone can make. And it sounds ridiculously easy, because it is, but we've served this to company, is where we bake up or roast up a tray of both regular potatoes and sweet potatoes, because not everybody wants to eat white potatoes. So we have some organic russets and we have some sweet potatoes, and we create what's called a potato bar. And then we have fixins like organic roasted corn, different flavors, beans, jalapeno peppers, guacamole, cilantro, maybe some steamed vegetables. But people love to build, especially children. If you get children involved and excited about the cooking and let them choose the vegetable and them help them cut it up if age appropriate and make it. People love customizing. Look at the popularity of all those restaurants like Chipotle and the salad bar restaurants. Well, every meal can be that way if you have the ingredients ready. And it's not that hard to make sure that there's some in the fridge and some in the freezer. Things like vegetables, you have to probably replace a little bit more often. You're not going to, keep those forever. But even a bag of frozen broccoli can be avoided. But if you're willing to just maybe think a little bit more simply and eat a little bit more simply, the other thing is I love the pressure cooker. I use the Instant Pot. It's got a stainless steel insert. Oh gosh, yesterday was Prime Day. They had the eight quart was a ridiculously low price, and the 6 quart I think was like $58. But if you use my initials AJ at instantpot.com, you can get $10 off. But I have four of
Nice.
these. Yeah, the reason I have four is, well, because I teach cooking, but I think everybody needs at least two, like maybe a 3 quart and an 8 quart or a six
I
quart.
I love it. I thought I was kind of crazy for owning 2 Instant Pots.
Oh no, you have to have at least two. You've got to have at least two. Absolutely. So, you can do things so quickly. So, like for instance, like if you got home, like you said, you're hungry, your son's hungry, what, blah blah blah. You have to have the ingredients in the house. Obviously, somebody's going to have to go shopping at some point. But now with things like Instant Cart, you can get groceries delivered like in a couple hours from Whole Foods and other other stores. But like I have a recipe for a black bean mushroom chili. It's so easy. I happen to live next door to Trader Joe's, so it's even easier for me. But if you didn't, the ingredients in this recipe I've taught in the smallest towns in the United States because I know they're available everywhere. And the ingredients are basically onions, mushrooms, black beans, corn, can be frozen or not, and some spices. Oh, and some tomato products. You know, I use the canned fire roasted tomatoes. But and if you sign up to be on my website at eatunprocessed.com, you can get this recipe emailed to you, or you can just go on YouTube and look it up and watch it. But the thing is you throw everything in, and you push the button, and in 6 minutes. Well, when I say 6 minutes is the cooking time. It could take 10 or 15 minutes to come up to pressure, but in less than 30 minutes, probably less than 20 minutes, you have a delicious, hearty, healthy meal. The other thing I do to save time is I know that I'm going to make this every week. And most people realistically don't make 30 different entrees for dinner like throughout the month and breakfast and lunch. They repeat whatever their favorites are. So when it comes to the spices in my individual recipes, I measure them out in advance in those little spice jars. When the spices are empty, I put it in the dishwasher, the label comes off, I stick a piece of masking tape on or duct tape, and I write down black bean mushroom chili, split pea soup, red lentil chili. And then like every 3 months, I do, like on a Sunday, I spend an hour doing a jar party where I just measure out the spices, and it makes it so easy. I come home, I take it out, I dump it in. And so it's really, it actually is really easy. And some of the recipes are so easy. I always joke that even my husband could do them because I do try to do that. You know, I got a lot of my culinary training before even going to culinary school because I worked with the blind. I was a volunteer culinary instructor at the Braille Institute. And any tip or trick that I could learn or develop to make it easier for people without sight is also going to be easier for people with sight. And so that's where I learned a lot of the stuff I did do, the shortcuts to save time. And, you know, even though my food doesn't have sugar, oil, and salt, I test it on regular people. I tested it on the blind people at the Braille Institute. I tested on the cleaning crew in my apartment building. And I always joke, if it doesn't pass the Maria test, it's not going in the book, because I'm at the point where I can eat steamed kale and be fine, but I know most people can't. So I do try to create flavor in my food, you know, with healthy things like herbs and salt-free seasonings and flavored vinegars and things like that. So batch cooking is really important. Getting a pressure cooker, air fryer. Oh my God, you know, who doesn't love crispy French fries? And now you can have them without oil with an air fryer. And so there are tools that can really help you, you know, get healthy food on the table fast. And the Instant Pot would probably be my favorite.
I love it. That was just a gold wealth of information. You mentioned your website. The link to your website is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntrail.com. Your website's eatunprocessed.com. And I'm on it right now, and I see it says that you get a whole list of these great recipes that you've mentioned for free if you just put in your email address. Yeah, these 5 Instant Pot recipes, because we could just make all 5, like you said, on Sunday, and then now we've got days worth of food, lunches, and even breakfast, you know, because we don't have to eat something like a cereal for breakfast, right? We could sit down and have some red lentil chili. That sounds delicious. I love it. Or sweet potatoes for breakfast. Or I like breakfast salads, especially in the summertime.
Me too.
I just take all the leftover vegetables that are in the fridge from the day before, and I mix them in with a bunch of lettuce. And I'm really big into, and I want to ask you what your thoughts on this are, but I'm really big into fermented foods for healing the gut. But there's salt in that. How you know, is it, what about using kimchi? And
believe it or not, there are salt-free brands. And I have a friend, could you go in my refrigerator and get the sauerkraut? Because I don't want to get, I'm attached to the headphones. There's some sauerkraut in I'm going to tell you the brand, because there is a brand that they sell at Whole Foods.
Really?
It comes in 4 flavors. And if you can't get it at Whole Foods, you can get it online. But it's on the top shelf, Pam. There's a delicious brand of salt-free sauerkraut. And she's going to be bringing me that jar in just a second. I know. And it comes in, there you go. Thank you. So this is called Healing Movement Raw Cultured Vegetables.
Wow.
And their website is healingmovement.net. And it says in this particular flavor, the ingredients are green cabbage, daikon, cucumber, ginger, caraway seeds, cilantro, lactobacillus plantarum, Okay, I can't read the rest of it. But anyway, the point is they have four flavors. They have a beet, a carrot, a caraway, and they have a really spicy one that's absolutely delicious. So I know they have them at Whole Foods. If your Whole Foods doesn't have it, maybe they'll order it, but you can also get them online. Also, I've actually made things like kimchi and sauerkraut salt-free. What you need to do is use celery juice, because celery, you juice the celery. Celery has an incredibly high amount of natural sodium that will work for these fermented foods.
Oh, brilliant. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so cool. Now, the air fryer. I'm on the fence about the air fryer because I thought that the high heat would create heterocyclic amines.
Yeah.
Is that not the
So
case?
okay. So what I think if you burn it beyond recognition there is. I want to see if I can get on my email while I'm talking to you, because Dr. Michael Greger, who would obviously make a great guest from you if
Yes.
you haven't talked to
He
him.
is amazing,
Um,
isn't he?
um, he sent me, because we went back and forth about this, the browning of the food. My understanding is that it's only dangerous if it's animal products. He did send me an email about some studies done with the air fryer. So if I can't find it, I don't want to waste the time on the broadcast, but I will find it. But my understanding is you don't have to cook it so that it's dark and brown, but that only happens if you're using oil and animal products.
Got it. So air fryer, as long as it's not burnt, doesn't create heterocyclic amines.
That's my understanding. But
Oh, so
as we're
cool.
looking, I'm going to keep looking for his. Our air fryer's bad. So he sent me. So I asked him a question, and I said, "Our air fryer's bad." And he writes back and he says, "They are if you fry sardines." And so then he sends me a medical journal article called "Impact of Air Frying on Cholesterol and Fatty Acids Oxidation in Sardines, Protective Effect of Aromatic Earths." So my understanding is they're probably okay. And again, you don't have to use it every day or ever, but I will tell you, one of the things I like about the air fryer, at least for my people that are really struggling to lose weight and recover from food addiction, is they will not eat vegetables because they hate them, because they don't like the taste. But something magical happens in an air fryer when you put in zucchini or mushrooms or cauliflower that just make them more palatable to people that are really vegetable adverse. But again, you
Oh.
don't have to have an air fryer. Listen, if you're willing to eat simply, you could just have a pot. You don't have to have anything. You can just steam everything. Now that's probably the healthiest way. I feel though, Ashley, that like my diet has been like pretty much A+ for almost 15 years now, at least 10, that I don't worry so much about like the air frying and things
Yeah.
like that. We'll see. I'm hoping to be around another 50 years so that I can say, see, the air fryer was fine.
I love it. What's interesting is Dr. Joel Wallach, who's a naturopath, says he has a list of 12 foods he thinks everyone should avoid. Um, and he says that don't eat the skins of baked vegetables like sweet potatoes and potatoes, because when it's baked, you can, if you steam it or if you boil it, it's fine. But if you bake, there's dry heat does something, creates a carcinogen to the skin. And so he says you can eat the whole everything else, but just don't eat the skin. So that's and I don't, I'm sure we could probably find where he cited his research from. But I'm thinking, man, for those who have kids like me, I'm thinking, oh, this would be so cool because I know my son will eat vegetables, but not all the time. And so it'd be a nice thing to have once in a while to kind of spice things up, or for those parents who your kids won't eat any vegetables, so
Right.
they're going to feel like they're eating fried vegetables when they're not. That sounds like a lot of fun. I didn't realize you could put mushrooms or zucchini
Oh my
chips
God,
in there. Oh my
absolutely.
gosh.
And think about it, Ashley, good, better, best compared to, I mean, people are feeding their kids McDonald's French fries. So I'm
Right.
not so worried about, you know, somebody putting some potatoes in the air fryer.
Right, exactly. Let's get them on the road to health and eating whole foods.
Right.
That was genius what you said about your spices. Sort of like how I make my supplements up, like sit down and just do them all
Yeah,
at once a
exactly. Like,
week.
right. It's so much easier.
That is really cool. Oh, I love it. And let's talk a little bit about technical things. So we've removed oil from everyone's kitchen. How do we saute?
Yeah. Oh, well, I just did a video 2 days ago, how to caramelize onions without oil. You just don't use oil. So the thing is there's nothing magical about oil, and unless you're going to do deep frying, you just need a good pan. And I always tell people, you always get the best that you can afford. Some people are not comfortable using nonstick or Teflon or copper chef, so you can get a good piece of stainless steel pan. A stainless steel pan, you could get something called waterless cookware, where you basically don't use much liquid, if any. And you can do something called dry sauteing or steam frying, where you're basically not using any liquid until, like, if you feel like it starts to stick or brown, and then you add like a tablespoon of water or two at a time, or some broth, salt-free or low sodium broth. But again, this is something, if people just watch my free YouTube videos, how to caramelize onions without oil. It's easy. You just don't use oil. You don't need it. And I don't know how culinary technique became so dependent on it, because even growing up, I don't remember my mom using oil to the degree to which people are using it today. But of oil, sugar, and salt, oil is the easiest thing to stop using, because it actually doesn't make the food taste better. It actually coats it so that you have to use so much salt. It coats the taste buds of your tongue that you can't taste it. Food tastes so much better without oil. And let me tell you, cleanup is a breeze. When I was working as a pastry chef, I would sometimes work late, and the dishwasher would go home, and I'd have to wash my own food processor in between recipes. And we were using a vegan shortening called Spectrum. And I remember I just couldn't get it off the plastic. I would have to wash it like 10 times. And I'm thinking to myself, if I can't get it off the food
Oh,
processor, what is it doing to my arteries? So, I mean, I'm not telling people not to eat fat if they want to have nuts and seeds and avocado. But again, you've already interviewed Dr. Esselstyn. They can listen to that podcast. But especially if they're struggling with their weight, it's just such a waste of calories. It's 4,000 calories a pound. It has no fiber, and it does not really make food taste better. If you think oil tastes so good, then drink it, because you're not going to like it. You're gonna vomit, because it's an emetic, and you like it because it's high calorie, high fat. And we didn't have a lot of time to talk about this, but the thing is people prefer the taste of high fat, high calorie foods, because they produce more of that pleasurable neurotransmitter dopamine in the brain. So they don't really like the taste of oil. They like the effect that it produces in their brain. So that's why they think they like it. Whereas, kale at 100 calories a pound, they ain't getting a lot of dopamine from that.
What's been the most successful advice or actionable steps that you've given to people that's helped them to transition, or to at least successfully give this a good try?
Well, I think the most successful advice I've given for the people that heed it is also the piece of advice that people balk at and fight me on, which is clean up your environment. Whatever health, lifestyle or behavioral change you're trying to make, you have to have your environment support you, because your environment either supports your addiction or it supports your recovery. It can't do both. And when it comes to things like drugs and alcohol, everybody pretty much agrees that if you just got out of rehab for drugs or alcohol, you probably don't go back to your job as the bartender. You probably don't hang around the bar. You probably don't keep alcohol in the house, even if it's for, quote, company. And people really get that, and they seem to respect and understand that. But when it comes to other things like food, they just think that they're somehow going to be able to muster this tremendous amount of willpower and go on a diet. And by the way, I don't recommend dieting. I recommend lifestyle change, preferably permanently. But people get so upset with me because, no addict really wants to stop their addiction. And so when you tell people don't have it in your house, I'm not telling people not to have it. I'm telling them not to have it in their house. There's a big difference. Willpower is a very short-lived commodity, but it's also only required when you have to make a decision. And if something is not there, you never have to decide to not eat it. And yes, there are people that are such severe addicts that will get out of bed at 12 o'clock and put on their, shoes and go to 7-Eleven. But for most people, that's not going to happen. But if it's in your house, it is very likely to happen. And I will guarantee that it will happen. And people don't like that I say this, but I've been saying it for 6 years. If it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And it's not a question of if you will eat it, only when. And I remember when my very first client 6 years ago, I was just helping her transition to veganism, because she was a type 2 diabetic, and she had heard Dr. Esselstyn, and, she was just trying to be regular vegan. And she called me on the 5th of July that she had relapsed. And, and I figured, okay, 5th of July, 4th of July, she went to a party, okay, and, because she had eaten some cheese. But I knew enough about this. And I said, well, where did you get it? And she said, well, it was in the refrigerator. And I said, well, what's it doing in the refrigerator? So even if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. There's just no exceptions to that rule. There may be, you might be able to, not have it for a day, a week, a month, maybe even a year. But the point is even though it may not call to you right now, it still has your number. And that day that your dog has to go to the vet, or you're in a car accident, or the boss yells at you, it's just too easy if it's in your house. Now, I understand there's people in living situations where it just can't be worked out. We try to work it out respectfully, where we ask with the spouse or the children that they can still have these foods, but please don't eat them in the house, because I can't control myself around them. So we ask them to eat them outside of the house, or if they absolutely refuse to do that, to get what's called a locked food safe, or a locked cabinet, or a locked refrigerator, so that they can coexist, things like that. But every expert that I've interviewed, whether it's a psychologist or a medical doctor or a health coach, has said the same thing, that we have to work harder on our environment than we do ourselves, that our environment predicts our success. There's an old saying in AA, I believe, that if you hang around a barber shop long enough, it's just a matter of time till you get a haircut. And if you're trying to not smoke, or not drink, or not eat bread, or not eat sugar, or not eat meat, and that stuff is in your house, I don't want to say you're going to fail. I don't want to use that word, but it is going to be so much harder to succeed, because it will call to you. Hopefully you are going to be interviewing Dr. Doug Lyle. I'm going to recommend highly that he talk to you. But one of the things he talks about is we were designed for an environment of scarcity, and we're genetically hardwired to always prefer the most concentrated source of calories in the environment. And so if that ice cream is in your freezer, and even though you are a chocoholic and it's vanilla ice cream, it doesn't matter, because it's still the most concentrated source of calories in your environment, and you are not going to rest until you eat it. So please respect the fact that if it's in your house, it's in your mouth. And if you really want to affect permanent dietary or lifestyle change, you need to get it out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
At least do an experiment. People say, well, it's not going to make any difference. I'll go out and get it. And, out of maybe 2,000 people I've worked with, maybe 2 have actually gone out and gotten it. And when they do that, I say, good for you, because you had to go out and get it. Because there is always a chance that if you have to go out and get it, especially if you live somewhere like where it's really cold, like I was in Detroit, it was like -6, there's a good chance you may not go out and get it, right? But if it's there, it's just too easy. You're never going to be able to create what I call the pause, which is that period where you're thinking like, well, do I want to do it? Where the devil and the angel on the shoulder kind of wrestle. So again, just please, people, respect that your environment is going to be critical to your success, especially your home environment, because especially if you have a job, like we have so many people in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program that are nurses that have to basically work in a crap field, because patients are always bringing them chocolate and things like that. You can't always control every environment around you, especially since they sell, candy at pet stores and hardware stores. You have to control your home environment. It is going to make the biggest difference. And everybody that fights me on that, until they do it, then they always say like, well, yeah, you're right. It did make a big difference. So please think about the environment as much as you think about anything else, because it is critical.
Yes, having those cupboards be completely void of all the foods that you feel are stopping you from your success. And when you open your fridge and you look and you see all the foods are really healthy and healing, and you could eat anything in your kitchen any time of day and have no guilt and feel good afterwards, then you've done a good job at cleaning up your environment. And so when those cravings hit, it's like you could I've gotten really creative, like Vitamix, frozen blueberries, and some like almond milk or coconut milk, and I'll make like a sorbet, right? And but that's frozen fruit, right? And so it's not there's no salt or sugar or oil in it, and and I'll even add spinach in it, right? Because you can throw spinach in that and blend spinach and frozen blueberries and make the what feels like ice cream. So we can get creative if we kind of are hit with those cravings, but we're gonna feel so much better afterwards. Than if we had binged on some ice cream or whatever our poison is. So let's say the listener, which I think it'd be really cool if all listeners did this as an experiment, cut out the SOS, cut out the salt, oil, and sugar. The first few meals kind of
Oh,
feel
the first few
bland.
meals. How about the first 30 meals? Seriously. I mean, it can take a while to what, excuse me, Dr. Goldhammer calls neuroadaptation, neurological adaptation. You had mentioned the book, The Pleasure Trap. They can get it on audio and Audible right now on CD. I actually am the voiceover actor on that. They had me record it. So I'll put in a little plug for that. But the thing is it takes a while to get used to the more subtle flavors and the whole natural foods. I'm going to tell you right now, it might not be a good idea for people to cut out salt right away. Maybe they could eat less salt by using things like, instead of table salt, which is 2,300 milligrams of sodium per teaspoon, they could use a product called raw coconut aminos that has only 95 milligrams of sodium per teaspoon. So you could get like 24 teaspoons of this product, which is very, very salty because it contains salt. They could use low sodium miso, which has about 110 milligrams of sodium, because salt is really, really hard. Unless they really know how to make flavors like that I believe I do with the recipes in my book, they might want to not do salt right away. But sugar and oil, why not? I mean, we know from Dr. Esselstyn how it injures the endothelial cells that line our vasculature. But it can take about 30 days, some people longer, because especially if you've been eating a high fat, high sugar, high salt diet, there's going to be some discomfort. There's going to be some detoxification. There's going to be some withdrawal. But this thing called taste neuroadaptation, that can take a while. It's sort of like if you grew up drinking non-fat milk, or excuse me, drinking whole milk like I did in the 60s. And then one day your parents switched you to non-fat milk. That non-fat milk tasted pretty nasty at first because it tasted kind of like water. But if your parents didn't give in, eventually you just got used to it because that's all there was, because your parents weren't going to go back to the whole milk. And then later on down the road, if somebody serves you whole milk, you were like, oh, this is so thick. It tastes like paint. And so the same thing can happen with our brain chemistry and our taste buds, but it can take a while. And if you're constantly assaulting your taste buds with sugar and fat and salt, it can take a while for foods that are less stimulating to taste good. Salt is probably the hardest. It could take a good 30 days, but if somebody could really get through that, eventually these foods, like if you start eating things like celery or chard, they taste incredibly, incredibly salty once you get off salt. And one of the reasons it's so hard for people is because, believe it or not, Ashley, most of their salt isn't even coming from the added salt from the salt shaker. It's coming from processed foods where the salt is hidden in things like bread instead of on the surface of the food on things like potato chips and French fries. And if you think about it, if Americans are eating 92% of their calories from animal products and processed food, and I think something like 67 to 72% of most people's calories are from processed food, they're on a pretty high sodium diet. So it can be a real shock to their taste buds if they completely cut out salt right away. I don't think oil is that hard, especially if they can eat some of the good whole food fats like nuts, seeds, and avocado. People don't really miss the oil. They may miss the fat. So I definitely recommend the whole food fats over the oil. But, sugar is a whole nother story. And if you are somebody that suffers from food addiction, that might be something you just want to cut out no matter what else your dietary pattern is, because it's not something that many people can moderate the use of very easily.
How would someone know that they have food addiction? What are some signs and symptoms to help someone recognize that this may be their problem?
Yeah, well, I wish I had told it when I copies. I'm going to get you a book, right? Would you grab me a copy of my? I'm so glad my friend is over here helping me with something. So I wrote a quiz in my book, and I could probably find it right now because it's really quick in the introduction. So there's lots of great quizzes that are free online. There's the Yale Food Addiction Quiz. Kay Shepard has a quiz. So there's lots of quizzes. But here's what I wrote for my people. There's 10 questions. So I said, so how do you know if you have a problem with a particular? This is page. Well, it's not a page because it's in the introduction. It's in Roman numerals, and I don't know what those mean. But anyway. So how do you know if you have a problem with a particular type of food or drink? Please ask yourself these 10 questions and answer as honestly as possible. Number 1, do you absolutely have to consume it daily, or perhaps even several times a day? Number 2, do you feel bad if you are unable to get your fix? Number 3, do you think about it often and can't wait until you are able to consume it again, even if you have just had it? Number 4, is it difficult for you to moderate your use of it? Number 5, do you often consume more of it than you intended to? Number 6, do you often feel shame or regret after consuming it? Number 7, Do you have physical or emotional withdrawal symptoms when you try to abstain from it? Number 8, is it difficult for you to get through even a single day without consuming this substance? And for people, coffee, for example, would probably be the answer to this. Number 9, does abstaining from it result in any physical or emotional discomfort? And number 10, does the mere thought of abstaining from it bring on strong emotions such as anxiety, sadness, anger, or grief? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may be suffering from an addiction. So that's how I assess it with my clients. And I think people kind of know, if they, I also tell them to do, I call it the Mint Milano test. And that was because growing up, I had this cookie that I loved before I was vegan called the Pepperidge Farm Mint Milano. And so you take your favorite treat, whatever it is, chocolate chip cookies, whatever, M&Ms, and you buy, a serving or, and you come home and you open it up and you have one cookie. And then you put it back in the cabinet. And if that bag is there in 6 months, you don't have a problem. But if it's gone in 6 minutes, you might.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
And my understanding is that once people get off of sugar and salt and oil, well, and you said like don't do it all at once because it can be painful. But get off of sugar. I've done the sugar detox with my husband, and it was really life changing. It really changed my relationship to food because I answered yes to a lot of your questions, and I'm constantly surprised at how common food addiction is. Because it's socially acceptable. Like, even alcohol to a certain extent is socially acceptable to consume, but not in all circles. And in all circles, food is socially acceptable to consume, right? So it can be a hidden drug.
Absolutely.
And because it directly triggers a dopamine, that pleasure response, because we are hardwired for survival to seek calorie dense foods so we don't starve to death as cave people. We're really fighting this ancient biology in today's era when all the food, all the processed food out there is calorically dense, unfortunately void of nutrition. So now our body is having pica or cribbing, where it is starving for the micronutrients we would be getting if we actually ate whole foods. And so we're dealing with the complexities of, childhoods with, obesity, or childhoods with, the emotional stuff we had to deal with growing up. And we're looking to self-medicate. We're looking for that pleasure. Some people are depressed or home alone, and they're looking to self-soothe. And ice cream's always there for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so, but it's very hard for people to come to admit that they have a problem because there's that shame, that guilt that they've been maybe burying or self-medicating to numb themselves. And yet it's very liberating when they come around and say, you know what, I'm not going to let food control me anymore. And avoiding sugar, cutting out sugar completely for, a certain length of time, like 30 days or 60 days, is one of those programs that can be life-changing for those who can now break that addiction. Now they start to consciously recognize it where it had unconscious control. When I experimented with going salt-free, it was really interesting to listen to the inner dialogue of the food addict inside me that was pleading and bargaining and begging for some more salt on the food. So I thought that was interesting. But now, like, sugar doesn't have sugar is not nearly as strong of a draw. I don't have a draw to it now since I have done that detox, and now I can cut it out and it's gone. And it's not in our environment, like you said. But salt for me is now like playing with lowering and decreasing salt. And I love your suggestion of going to raw coconut aminos. So we're getting less and less and less. But you're right. There's something that happens to the palate. We start to actually taste food. And I was really surprised that back when I ate fast food, salad tastes like cardboard. And now salad is the most delicious thing in the world. Like, I would rather have a salad for breakfast or a salad for dinner. And it's not just romaine lettuce. I mean, it's like 10 different kinds of vegetables. And it's the most amazing, it's like candy. Like I'll cook up some beets, and I feel like almost guilty because sautéed beets taste like candy to me, and or sweet potato tastes like candy. Whereas
Yep.
people who are eating, fast food, they don't get to have the pleasure of what real food tastes like. And I love that you're teaching us how to come back to using not only food as medicine but making it taste really good. So
Right.
when
Can I just add one thing?
Absolutely.
I want people to know that this is a difficult journey, no matter what. It's not easy. If it was easy, they would have done it already. But it is possible, it is doable, and that they can eventually learn to actually prefer the taste of whole natural food. It's possible. And however they get there, whether it's coming through a program like mine or going to a place like Optimum Health Institute or going to a place like the True North Health Center in Santa Rosa or doing a water fast, it is possible. The thing is it does take some time. There's a time commitment involved. And the thing is, people want a quick fix. They want to, they want to be thin tomorrow and they want to be healthy tomorrow. And it doesn't work that way. But I will tell you, as somebody that for 43 years had a Coke Slurpee with 8 pumps of vanilla syrup and a 48-ounce Dr. Pepper for big gulp every day of her life, I mean, like you, I wake up and I eat like a salad for breakfast. Sometimes I even put the ingredients in a blender and drink the salad. And I'm not even putting fruit in it. I'm putting in zucchini, spinach, tomato, and cucumber and drinking it. And to me, it tastes delicious. And for 43 years, I didn't eat a single fruit or vegetable. So I just want people to know that wherever they are in their journey towards optimal health, there's hope. There is hope, but they have to take their time. They have to understand this is going to take time, but it just gets better and better. And the longer you are, I use the word abstinent because that word resonates with me, abstinent from, the crap foods that I was eating that made me fat and sick. Like you say, to me, like, I can't believe that sweet potatoes are legal. I cannot believe that they're, especially the Japanese. I mean, I just don't understand how I can eat these as much as I want and be slender. They're so good. And like you say, fruit, like I never ate fruit for 43 years because fruit wasn't sweet enough. But now when I eat things like the Envy apple or the Sugar Kiss melon or fresh jackfruit, I'm like, you mean I really get to eat this all I want? I mean, I don't get it. So there is hope. But taste neuroadaptation, it's going to take them. They gotta be willing to give it at least 30 days. And the hope is that even if the food doesn't taste that good at first, they're going to feel good. They're going to start
Yes.
losing weight if they need to lose weight. Their skin is going to clear up. Their brain fog is going to go away. And their joints aren't going to hurt. And so that even at the beginning, because remember, I ate terrible. Well, to me, it was terrible, the Optimum Health diet for 6 months, because I mean, to me, that was better than having cancer. But the thing is even if the food at first doesn't taste good, if they would concentrate on how else they feel other than the taste. And this is just, they need to give it time. They need to just be all in for, I think, at least 30 days. I say 21, but I think 30 is better because that's when the magic happens. And that doesn't mean that they're never going to have a slip or a relapse. I think, you had said, what advice would I give people? I said the environment. The other advice I'd give is to try to get some kind of support. I have a group called the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, but there's plenty of groups on Facebook and Meetup, because if you can get a tribe of like-minded people, you don't feel so isolated and alone in this journey. And you know that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your brain. There's nothing mentally, emotionally wrong. It's not because you had a bad childhood. It's because we are designed for an environment of scarcity. We're genetically hardwired to eat the most concentrated food in the environment, and crap is everywhere. There's nothing wrong with you. The problem is the environment. And again, please read The Pleasure Trap if you really want to understand scientifically about what I'm saying. But the food, it really can taste delicious. Maybe not so much at first, but it will. But you got to give it time.
You summed up the problem so eloquently. I love it. Now, your latest book is The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, a revolutionary approach to conquering cravings, overcoming food addiction, and lose weight without going hungry. I love your book. I bought the ebook version, and I consume it on my cell phone at 1 a.m. Like I bought it and I was like rapidly go. I couldn't put it down. I had to keep just going. I'm like, my eyes were drooping, and I know I need to get up early the next morning. I'm like, must keep reading. It was so good.
Thank you.
I love your book because I mean, I have struggled with weight my entire adult life, and so for you, you're my inspiration.
Aw.
And I hope you also inspire many of my guests who struggle like me with weight. And I eat so healthy and so clean, and I've cured all the diseases I have, and now my last one is weight loss, and I'm,
And
something I'm
and
working on. But just so you know, you're my inspiration.
oh, thank you.
And looking at now, there's these before and after pictures of you online. If anyone Googles Chef AJ, there's like the before nuts and after nuts,
Yeah.
and you look. I mean, I don't know. It was like, look, between 40 and 50 pounds that you lost.
Yeah,
I think
50
you
pounds,
lost
50.
50 pounds
Yeah.
just cutting out nuts. Can you tell us that story? Like,
Yeah, well, that's the one thing that I do get criticized quite a bit, sometimes from people in my own plant-based community, because they think I'm going around telling people, not to eat nuts or that nuts aren't healthy. And I don't say that at all. But what I do say, and again, God, I want to be your agent and find you more podcast guests, because this would be a great guest to explain what I'm going to talk about. Dr. Rosanne Alviera. She's a geneticist at the UC Davis Medical School. So, there are doctors out there, and you probably interview them, that say you can eat fat and get thin. And that might be true for some people, but it's not true for everyone. And especially people that are women, and especially people that have been overweight their whole life. That the old children's nursery rhyme, Jack Sprat can eat no fat, his wife can eat no lean. There are people that vary genetically in how much fat they can eat and be lean. And I heard from many of the wonderful plant-based doctors that nuts were essential, and that we wouldn't, to live long and prevent heart disease, we had to eat at least an ounce a day. And I've gone to the True North Health Center weighing 165 pounds. I'm 5'6" in January of 2011. And I decreased the amount. I knew I was eating too many before, of course, if I was eating peanut butter chocolate cheesecake, but I decreased them to exactly an ounce a day, weighed and measured, because I hate weighing and measuring anything, but I did. And for 1 year, even eating the health promoting diet without the sugar and the oil and the salt, I could not lose an ounce. It wasn't until
wow.
I went and again, this may not be for everyone, but see, this is the thing I don't understand. If you have, okay, people are worried about fat deficiency. I volunteer at a hospital every week. I've been volunteering for 40 years. I've never met one patient in the cancer center or the hospital because they were fat deficient, right? I mean, but we got like 70% of Americans that have too much fat. If you have fat on your body anywhere, you're not going to be fatty acid deficient in 30 days from running this experiment of adding no added fat to your diet. No nuts, no seeds, no avocado, no added oils. There's fat in everything. There's trace amounts of fat in greens. Fruit has trace amount of fats. I think greens has 3% of their calories from fats. And things like whole grains like oats can have up to almost 20% of their calories from fat.
Wow.
But in nuts and seeds, there's 90% there. It's all pretty much all fat. And Dr. McDougall, who again would be another great guest for you, has been saying for 40 years, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. And if you have fat on your body, you don't necessarily need to be taking it in. So for me, and for a lot of the people that I've worked with, until we stop adding fat completely, our weight just did not budge. And so I have not added any fat knowingly to my diet since January 2nd, 2012. I'm not saying this is for you or for everyone, but I don't see why it wouldn't be worth a 30-day experiment just to see if it would work. But I do have my fatty acid levels checked every year at my physical to make sure that my omega-3 and 6 and DHA and EPA and ALA and conversion rate is adequate. It's not only good, it's high, but remember, I'm eating lots and lots of green vegetables. And if it ever were to be compromised or low, I would take something like Dr. Furman or True North's DHA supplement. I'm not opposed to that, but so far I haven't needed it. So in my case, what Dr. McDougall has been saying for 40 years about the fat you eat is the fat you wear has been entirely true. And the people I've worked with that have been overweight, when they've lost weight this way and tried to add back some small amount of nuts and seeds, they've gained weight back. Not all of it, but that's why I recommend to people that if they're worried about their omega-3s, you don't have to have nuts, even though they're in walnuts. The flax seeds or the chia seeds, having a teaspoon to a tablespoon every day sprinkled on your salad or your oatmeal. This would be a great way to get them if you're worried. You don't have to be, pounding down the nuts and the avocados. But, like Dr. McDougall says, this has never not worked. But the thing is people A lot of times when they've gone low fat or no fat, they're still eating a lot of flour or sugar or alcohol or animal products. But if you do what I proposed in my book, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, where you're just eating to the left of the red line, we've never seen anybody not lose weight. The other problem with nuts is especially for people that suffer from food addiction. For a lot of us, even though nuts may not be addictive the way that sugar and flour is, where we can't stop eating them, because they're a high fat, high calorie food that produces so much more pleasure, so much more dopamine in the brain, they become like trigger foods. And so they perpetuate overeating, and they just make us want more and more and more. Even though I had a sweet potato at lunch that probably after cooking weighed 1.5 pounds. So it was, no, well, actually it was pounded, I don't know, 400 or 500 calories, right? But I'm full, I'm stuffed for several hours. But I didn't want to eat another one. But man, you give me one Brazil nut, I don't even like Brazil nuts. And it's like, where's the peanut butter? So that's kind of how you know if you have a problem with them. Some people can eat nuts and be normal weight. But Dr. Oliveira, she has a genetic twin sister who followed a low-carb diet, whereas she followed a low-fat diet, and the sister was 50 pounds heavier. And she's been doing like scientific research studies on the difference in their metabolisms and how they are. And she can explain this better, but apparently women that have been overweight are metabolically different than these slender doctors that are male that are telling us to eat all this fat. And women that are overweight, or not even women, but people that are overweight and lost weight are even more genetically different than somebody that's never been overweight. So the thing is you have to know thyself. If you can be eating nuts and seeds and all these high fat foods and be happy with your weight, do them. They're not unhealthy. I mean, unless maybe if you have heart disease, Dr. Esselstyn would argue. But the point is if you're overweight, then maybe it's not you. So wouldn't it be worth just doing a 30-day experiment and just eating very clean fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes without added fat, sugar, oil, and salt, and just see what happens? Doesn't work for you, day 31, you could go back. But I'm going to tell you that people that really did it, it's never not worked. The thing is as we talked about earlier, about the more high fat, high calorie the food, the more dopamine is released. If people are relying on their food for their stimulation, for their entertainment, for their pleasure, to medicate with, they're going to feel uncomfortable. Dr. Esselstyn talks about how you have to down-regulate that fat receptor to learn to prefer the taste of these low-fat foods. And guess what? It's worse than salt. It can take longer than 30 days. It can take sometimes 90 to 120 days for people to really like the taste of the lower fat foods, but it can be done. So that's my story with nuts. It's interesting because in the food addiction programs that are non-vegan, a lot of them do not even allow nuts because of their, quote, psychoactive properties. They're just so easy to overeat on. In nature, nuts came in a shell, and people think about walnuts as that little round brown shell. But if you've ever seen a walnut in nature, it's like the size of a softball, because first you got the 2 walnut halves, and then you got the brown shell that everybody's familiar with, and then you got like this other like big ball of like hardness over it. And then you got all this dirt. And so how our ancestors managed to eat an ounce a day, let alone like even one, I don't even know. But, Dr. McDougall's been saying they come in hard shells for a reason. So, all this coconut oil craze. I mean, I went to culinary school and I still can't open a coconut, So.
I love it. I love it. Now, if every listener said, you know what, okay, I'm going to commit to doing it for the rest of the year. Let's just say the rest of 2018, we ate this way. Somewhere along the line, somewhere right around Thanksgiving, we would be totally in love with this food and it would taste unbelievably delicious to us. But then Thanksgiving happens, and then Christmas happens, and then New Year's happens. What advice do you have for us to stick with a healthy way of eating that doesn't trigger food addiction, and that allows us to maintain our health, our weight loss if that's what we're working on, or building health if that's what we're working on?
Well, we could do another whole show on this, but my advice is stay home. I know that's not realistic, but here's the thing. Eat before you go. Eat before you go. Never show up at a holiday party. Never show up at a restaurant. Never show up at any party without some good quality starch, some filling, satiating starch, or some vegetables in your tummy, because it's going to be so much easier to overeat or eat things that are maybe not on your plan if you're hungry. So it's just like they say, never go grocery shopping hungry, never go to any social engagement hungry. bring your own food if you can. And you
Yes.
can do it in a very respectful way. You don't have to be me where I just bring my food everywhere and eat it because that's just who I am. But you can always say, hey, and be very specific. Instead of saying to a host, hey, can I bring something? And oftentimes they'll say no because they know what their menu is. But if you say to a host, hey, can I bring a very large, delicious green salad from my garden with XYZ in there, blah, blah, blah. Most hostesses or hosts will not turn something like that down. And so then if you have a dish that you know that's going to satisfy you, that's going to be delicious, that you can eat, that others can enjoy, you're going to do fine at these social situations. Restaurants can be a bit more challenging. Like I said, we could do it's a whole chapter of my book. We could do a whole show on that. But I would say never go anywhere hungry. And also another good thing to do is, look, people are human. Most people are not Dr. Goldhammer who can just eat rice and vegetables every day and not care. So you're probably going to have a slip. You might have a relapse. But here's the thing. Make a rule. Make a deal with yourself, or if you're in like my group and have an accountability partner, that before you succumb to one of these hyperpalatable foods that are probably not in your best interest, make a deal with yourself that you're always going to eat something healthy first. Because if you have,
Oh, I love it.
maybe a salad or a sweet potato first, then it's not going to have that same impact on your blood sugar and your brain if you didn't. So that, just make that a rule. Yeah, okay. Because you know what? The truth is sometimes people are just hungry and their glucose is low. And that if they eat that healthy thing like that sweet potato, that hot fudge sundae maybe doesn't have the same amount of appeal, or maybe not going to be able to eat as much of it. So make that a rule. Before I eat, just kind of like, you probably tell your kid before he can go outside and play. Well, he's probably too young, but we were told, you have to do your homework before you go outside and play. Well, you got to eat something healthy before you eat something less healthy. And so that's one way to help navigate it. Always have healthy food with you. I never go anywhere without what I call my purse cooler. It's a fashionable woman's purse, so I can sneak it in anywhere, but it's actually a cooler. So I always have healthy food with me. So I don't worry about it. But these are things we teach in the program and things that people pick up along the way. It is not easy to be healthy in a world, as Dr. Goldhammer says, designed to make us fat, sick, and miserable. It takes some effort.
I love it. Let's talk about your program. So we can go to eatunprocessed.com.
Yeah.
Let's say we're all on your website. Where should we go to learn more about your
Yeah.
program?
Just click on the Ultimate Weight Loss page. There's a bunch of videos and explanations of what it is. And also, I have, I think, over 80 episodes now of a show I do every Wednesday I do it through Facebook, and then I put it on YouTube. It's called Weight Loss Wednesday. And the first 75 episodes were done live, and they can just watch them if they want to know more about who I am and what I stand for and what I teach. And there'll probably be more information than they ever would want to know.
Brilliant. I'm looking at it right now. I think anyone could afford it. You've really made it incredibly affordable. Ultimate Weight Loss. Is it the online version? It says.
Yeah,
and then
you do it online. We send them DVD. We don't send the DVDs anymore. We have it all downloadable audio. But the best part is the support, because I'm in the private group literally from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, checking their posts and reading their posts and answering them, and they're with people that get them, that understand. They don't have to feel like isolated and alone because they've eaten a cake, they've thrown away a cake in the trash can and gone back and ate it. Because who hasn't? I mean, when people, I remember when she did that on Sex and the City, and people were like shocked. I'm like, well, doesn't everybody do that? I thought everybody did that.
Right. I remember my father, when he was alive, told me that when I was a teenager and I was, the bad teenager that smoked, and he was trying to get me not to, he goes, when I was a teenager, I smoked. And one day I caught myself sifting through an ashtray for butts, a public ashtray. And he said that's the day he quit cold turkey. Because he was raised very upper crust. He was raised very proper, finishing school, everything. And so to catch himself sifting through a public ashtray because he needed his fix, he went, whoa, I've got a problem. And he just quit like that.
Well, that was his rock bottom. And that a lot of times with food addiction or with people that are overweight, a lot of times people have to hit rock bottom before they'll make a change, because until I think that pain associated with the change becomes less than the pain of staying the same, most people aren't going to do anything about this. I know my rock bottom was in 2010 when I broke my knee. And even though people say, oh, well, you weren't that fat. It's like, well, I was 50 pounds overweight and I couldn't use the crutches or the walker when I had my broken knee. I had to go in a wheelchair. I couldn't use the restroom by myself, and that was pretty embarrassing. If you have to have your husband wipe your butt because you're too fat to, hold yourself up. That was my rock bottom, and that's when I said, when I get out of this wheelchair, I'm taking this weight off. I don't care what. And then I went to True North, and it still took another year. Even after, here's the thing: I knew what to do. I learned from the best, Dr. John McDougall, Dr. Doug Lyle, Dr. Ellen Goldhammer. I knew what to do. It still took me a year to implement it.
And I love that you've taken all your experience and you very vulnerably, with all of your wisdom, now teach in your Ultimate Weight Loss program all of the participants how to implement these lifelong changes for successful and lasting healthy weight. So, just like your friend Don, who went through to help all the people that he has now helped through his life. You too, you went through, and you're now using that as the fodder for your wisdom to help the people you're helping. So,
Yeah.
Again, you're my inspiration, and
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else on your website that you'd love the listeners to check out? So they should definitely put their email address in to get the free recipes.
Yeah.
Check out the Ultimate Weight Loss program because it's affordable, and they should just go for it and jump in and dive in and experience it. What else
Yay.
on your website should we look at?
If this happens to air before September, we do a live conference with Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer, and this year actually Dr. Neil Barnard, who you interviewed. It's called the Ultimate Weight Loss Live Conference in Vegas. It is the funnest conference. There'll be about 400 people there that have the same food addicted brain as you. Some of them are slender, some of them have not yet lost weight. It doesn't matter, and the food is all SOS free and delicious. And we do this every Labor Day weekend at the Tuscany in Vegas. And for people that can't make the conference live, we can, for $97, there's a live stream. You can watch the entire 3-day conference from your home. So that might be something that people would enjoy.
Cool. Very cool. So they can, it's you in the menu, it says UWL Live 2018. So they'll click that in the menu to enroll. And of course you have amazing YouTube videos that people can dive in and learn from you. I love this idea of the Ultimate Weight Loss Live, especially if someone could attend it, because then they can experience the foods. That really helps.
The chefs do a really good job in doing my recipes. We're really happy with them.
Really cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
this has
my
been such
pleasure.
a pleasure. I could just talk to you for days.
I know, me too. Can I just say one thing real quick? Because you had mentioned about, and I never thought about this before, but you said about how, like, through Don, I'm able to help other people. I just want everybody to know that you all have that power. Maybe it's not with health or food, but that, my mom always used to say, if you're being run out of town, get in front of the crowd and make it look like a parade. And it's like that. and I took that to mean, like when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. All of us have had, not all of us, but most people I know have had something in their life that they're either maybe ashamed of or embarrassed of, that was difficult, or trauma or abuse. And, you can't change the past, but what you can do is take your past and help somebody else. And so that's kind of what I think my life has been about. Because believe me, I wouldn't want anybody to go through my life. I don't want to go through my life again. But whatever you've been through, learn from that and find a way. That's the gift that you can now be putting forth into the world to help others, because otherwise it just seems like, you went through it for no reason. But now I'm like, oh, well, I had to go through this so I could learn this so that I could help all these people. And that's the best part.
Yes, because it transforms your own relationship to your past. That's beautiful. I love it. I feel it's what I'm doing now with my son. It's totally transforming my relationship to my past. And I had a really hard time in the education system. I was one of those kids that learns outside the box. And so now I'm seeing how I can help my son. And so he's practically reading now, and he's 3. And that's something I didn't learn to read till I was in the 2nd grade. And so it was for me, it was a point of shame and struggle. And later I just learned I'm incredibly intelligent. And I don't learn like well in a classroom. So
Yeah.
there's so many of us like that feel like the system failed us, but now we could take that pain and instead turn it into something that fuels us and drives us to help others learn. And so I feel that,
Yep.
I am now really good at teaching people things because I had to learn how to learn and how to teach. And so it's like, take whatever has our wounds of the past and you turn them around to be points of empowerment because we figure out how to help others.
Yep.
That's beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everyone's going to
Thank
check out
you.
eatunprocessed.com. Everyone should just definitely get your free recipes because they're gorgeous and delicious by signing up for your newsletter. And I'd love to have you back on the show. Anytime you have anything to share or teach or promote, please come back. It would be my honor and pleasure.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm really enjoying your podcast.
Do you feel like you're missing something? Are you searching for the right answers to solve your health issues? Do you feel like you should have more energy and mental clarity? With everything you're doing for your health, you may be missing one key component. Our body needs 90 essential nutrients every day to function optimally. 60 minerals, 12 amino acids, 2 fatty acids, and 16 vitamins each and every day. Because of the farming practices over the last 100 years, most of our food has 60% fewer vitamins and minerals compared to just 50 years ago. So if you aren't eating 8 cups of a variety of fruits and vegetables each day, you may be missing some of your essential nutrients. These are the raw building blocks the body needs to create new healthy tissue, healthy hormones, balanced digestive system, strong muscles, bones and joints, and maintain an optimal functioning nervous system. Especially if you're experiencing more stress or if you've gone through an illness like an infection, that takes more resources. So if you're not consuming more vitamin C and more of all the 16 vitamins and all the 60 minerals when you're going through more stress, either physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, those stressors take more nutrients to kind of survive those bumps in the road in life. And over time, that whittles away, that kind of depletes our nutrient tanks, our stores in our body. Without these 90 essential nutrients, things start to break down. Now, you've experienced these breakdowns. Maybe you get migraines. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe your hormones are out of balance, your digestion's out of balance, or you have some aches and pains. Maybe you've even been diagnosed with something. You have a series of symptoms, and if those symptoms all look like something, then we can diagnose it, right? That's what MDs can do. MDs will treat these breakdowns with drugs and mask your symptoms. But if your body has a nutrient deficiency, no amount of drugs will fix the problem. 7 years ago, I embarked on a journey to cure my diabetes, infertility, PCOS, high blood pressure, and chronic adrenal fatigue. I felt like I was a mess. Through my research, I found a company that made natural supplements to address these nutrient needs. They formulated their supplements to exceed all standards of quality. Their minerals are the most bioavailable and absorbed by the body that I have ever found. After getting on their protocols for healthy hormones and blood sugar, along with their dietary recommendations for better health, I reversed my type 2 diabetes, I reversed my infertility, I no longer had high blood pressure, my energy and vitality came back, and after 6 years of trying to get pregnant with my husband before we found these supplements, once we got on these supplements, we were able to conceive our wonderful healthy son, who's now 3 years old, and he is amazing, and we would have never had that had we not found this company. Speaking of our son, he's also taking these supplements for optimal health. His pediatrician thinks they are amazing. If you'd like to give these supplements a try and see for yourself if you're experiencing a nutrient deficiency, please go to takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Their health coaches are phenomenal. I personally know all of them. They're amazing people. And I just want you to know, as my listener, I feel like I have to I need to protect my listeners. I would never promote anything that I didn't 100% believe in and I didn't feel was healthy or good for you. I feel like you're my tribe, and I'm sharing this information. In fact, for the last 2 years, the only reason why I've been doing this podcast is so that I can help as many people as possible gain their health back. And so the health coaches at takeyoursupplements.com, I really trust that they will make sure that you're well taken care of. They will work with you to help determine the best protocol for your nutrient needs and work within your budget. They will also help to implement a holistic protocol that includes supporting a healthy diet and lifestyle. Go to takeyoursupplements.com, fill out the form, and one of their health coaches will get back to you really shortly. And then you guys can schedule a time to talk on the phone, and they will work with you to help you dial in all your nutrient needs. I really look forward to hearing about your experience with them. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me in our Facebook group. Go to Facebook, search Learn True Health, and join our group. Let me know what you think about the wonderful health coaches at takeyoursupplements.com. And by the way, when you go to takeyoursupplements.com and you get assigned to a health coach, they're your health coach. You're not going to keep getting a different person every time. You get one person, and they work with you and they hold your hand for months down the road. They're there for you to support you month after month while you're on your nutrient protocol, and they're helping you dial in your nutrient needs. They're really wonderful like that. So I know you'll enjoy your experience with them, and I'd love to hear about your experience with them. Please feel free to, you can email me as well, ashley@learntruehealth.com. I love hearing success stories. Like I said, I've been working with a supplement company for my own health for the last 7 years, and I've reversed so many issues. I love sharing this information because I think that many of you will be able to resolve your issues with nutrition, just like I've seen many people do. With that said, go to takeyoursupplements.com, fill out your information, and a health coach is very excited to start working with you and helping you get your health back.